many US companies have announced that it will keep 10% of their workforce in remote control for the long term. So for entrepreneurs and managers, that means we're thinking our way to manage. We are here today to give you tips to better manage remote teams, ensure productivity and remain close to colleagues from a personal, but also a professional, but also a personal point of view. And we have invited a great expert in remote work, Pamela Corbin-Audoux. Hi, Pamela. You know a lot about remote work because you have worked for a fully distributed company, GitHub, and I'll let you now present yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Caroline, Gaël, Ilaria. I'm so happy to be here. So as you said, I am Pamela Corbin-Audoux. It's a very long French name, but I'm totally fine with that. What I do in life is I love stories. This is what I thrive on. I love stories about the human side of innovation and technology. I've navigated the tech industry, the luxury industry, and the recruitment industries for about 20 years as a marketer. And now I'm embracing a second calling in people-focused topics. It goes from recruitment, marketing to diversity and inclusion. I fairly recently joined Doctolib, the healthcare tech unicorn. It was earlier this month. I've onboarded remotely, so that's yet another experience as a remote worker for me. And I'm going to be the employer branding and employee engagement for them. I will tell the brand story, again, stories. I will try to attract talent. We're hiring a lot, by the way, shameless plug. And we'll help the culture grow from within, but also with additional people coming from the outside. This company has quickly adopted a remote work, basically overnight. And they have made sure that by doing that, they could still support the healthcare community by providing the best services. This is how we've made telehealth and teleconsultation available for so many physicians right now and for their patients. But prior to coming to Doctolib, as you said, I used to work for GitHub for 3 years. It's a very popular company known by the developers and the open source community in general, but also enterprises. It's a very distributed company. I would say that about 2/3 of the company work outside of the San Francisco office or of any of the offices, mostly working from home, but also from co-working spaces. And in this company, I led a remote team from the comfort of my home. So yeah, I've been fully remote for 6 years now.
Okay, I will give you like some answer coming from the survey. I will not close the vote yet for the new people who just joined. You can still vote on the survey to know more about you and your remote work and management habits. So we have people, most of them are company size coming from 1 to 10. 53%, 21% it's between 100 and 500, and more than 500, 21% of the people. So most of you have an experience in remote work, with remote work occasionally, 68%, and 26% for at least 6 months. So it's a lot, and never for 5%. So the newbies are 5% of you. Your level of management, we have individual contributor 42, and people managing 1 to 10 direct reports 37, and more than 10 people 20%. And the good news is that the majority of you, 55% or 57 now, enjoy working from home. 30% of you can't wait to enjoy, but can't wait to get back to the office. But 19% want to stay in remote after the crisis. And some of you are feeling isolated and overwhelmed, and no worries, we have a lot of great tips to give to you. So I will let the survey open for now, and we will start with Pamela.
You will maybe just re-explaining how to use the tool. So we've got the chat where you can just do the presentation, say hi, react on what you want. And we have the Q&A area where you can ask questions and you can vote for questions that you find interesting if you don't want to ask it again. And we will pick some of the questions and respond live to them. So use please the Q&A area to ask your question and the chat only for chatting.
And please don't hesitate to ask your questions. There's no silly question. We're in this together. There's no silly question, just questions that we haven't asked. So. And
last thing on my side, if you need to leave earlier because you have another meeting or it's complicated for you, we are recording this conference and we will share it to everyone within 2-3 days. Time for us, to edit it and upload it on YouTube. So
okay. So great, we have already 2 questions. So I will start the conversation and then I will pick your question during the conversation. So perhaps my first question is a little bit about the history of remote work. When did remote work start and why tech industry is so advanced in the matter? Please, Pamela.
So I'm not like a historical expert or anything, but I've dig a little bit because obviously it was something that was very interesting for me as well to know. But if you go back to before the Industrial Revolution, you could see that most people were working from home. They were living in work homes, actually. You had people, whether they were cobblers, potters, blacksmiths, bakers, coopers, they were all working from home. The other people who didn't work from home most of the time were people that were fishermen, people caring about the land, the crops. So they would work outside of their homes, but then they would sell and package their goods from their homes. So it's been something that's been around for a long time. And then there was the Industrial Revolution about, well, late 18th century, early 19th century when it began. And people needed to move from their home with the beginning of mass production to go to work to the plants, to the production units, to the factories. They had to work on machines and the machines were way too big for them to be hosted in a home. So they needed to go to those units. So this is when people actually began working and going to work, actually. Assembly lines, we've all seen the Charlie Chaplin movies, the modern times. But if you, okay, and this is where you see I'm not an historian, but if you fast forward a couple of centuries and a couple of wars, obviously, there's a huge technological leap, maybe a few actually, that come into play. The personal computer in the mid-70s. And we have people working in call centers, for example, in retail and government agencies in the US, the NASA, namely, in the 70s, who started saying, hey, why don't you work from home? It's going to be easier for everyone. And then oil crisis, people getting a little bit more aware of environmental issues, and people saying, oh, maybe I don't want to pollute the earth that much. So people are starting to see, maybe it would be good for me to work from home. Let's not forget about the people that are freelancers and artists and creative people in creative jobs as well. Many of them used to work from home anyways. That was really kind of a trend at the time, early 70s as well. And both companies and workers started to see the advantages, the benefits of working from home again. So then you have the telecommunications, they improve, the internet is going mainstream, and we fast forwarded a few decades again, and working from home is cheaper and you can be connected to your colleagues and to your boss and to your manager and to the rest of the organization. I remember working for a PR company at the time, and they were selling voice on IP, VoIP, and it was such a revolution for enterprises to be able to have cheaper, well, inexpensive communications around the world. So that was really a great revolution. And now we can do video conferences, just like we're doing right now. You have plenty of chat tools with Yammer, Slack, etc. And with the startups, because we're talking about the tech industry and you were wondering why they are so advanced, you have to see that those companies usually are created within, well, the Silicon Valley or some places, some areas that are very, how should I say, they are very narrow geographically. And they started tapping into the same talent pools. And it's always the same people that you go and recruit and hire. And and they go from one job to the other, and everybody knows each other. And after a while, the talent pool is really, really poor because everybody knows everyone. So if you want to get the best people to work with you, you need to sometimes go outside and find new people and be a little bit more inclusive, because if you want to have inclusive products and services, you need to also have people who develop those products and services to be inclusive, to come from other backgrounds. And with the influence of some of the early work of a startup called, it was 37 Signals at the time, now it's Basecamp. They wrote this manifesto basically for remote work, which is called Rework, amongst other things. And it was a way to say, we need to have the best people for the job, no matter where they are. We need to have the best set of skills. And this doesn't require you to come to the office. We can provide you with all the things you need. You need a connection, a steady internet connection. You need a laptop, probably a printer for some of you, and you need your brain power, and that's all you need. And you can work from anywhere. It doesn't have to be from home even. It can be from your favorite coffee, anywhere. So yeah, and now that's part of the perks. Yeah. That's part of the basic package of the perks when you work in tech. It's not even a problem most of the time. And myself, I started working 3 years ago as a employee. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just about remote work. Do you think it's here to stay or just a fad due to COVID? What are you thinking about that?
I don't know whether you've seen that, but on LinkedIn, there was a meme that was quite funny where people were asking what accelerated the digital transformation of companies. And you had three possible answers. The first one was the CEO, the second one was the CTO, and then the third one was COVID-19. And for many companies, it was COVID-19 that made them, shift to this remote work mode. To answer your question, I do believe that it's not a fad, and I hope it's here to stay. Probably not in the format that we know today, because we're in a pandemic, so hopefully we won't have that anymore in a few months, but and we'll be more prepared. But I do believe that both companies and collaborators will see the benefits of working from home, whether that's more productivity, less stress, not having to take the public transportations to go somewhere. So that's also better for the environment if you don't take your car, being able for companies to reorganize their office layout, to have more space to do other stuff, because the need for real estate becomes totally different when you don't have as many employees on site. And so many other perks. I'm sure that many people listening today can probably testify to what good things came out of working from home. But I really do hope, I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you the future. I really hope that companies will be able to transform the way they see things when it comes to remote working in a sustainable, durable way.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And so we will come directly now to tips to manage team remotely. We have a lot of questions, so I will pick some, and you can then really give your point of view about your tips. But perhaps you want to give first an overview about the do and the don't about remote, so manage a team remotely, and then I will come to the question, and you can give your answer. So if you just want to give an overview, and then I will pick directly the question from Carola, Dunya, Marina, Sophie, Ilana. We have a lot. Okay.
No worries. Thank you. So I'm very human. I have made so many mistakes. I have made many of the don'ts that I'm gonna talk about, and I'm trying my best to abide by the do's. But I think the whole point is to be okay with vulnerability and being okay with things not being perfect. So it's going to help tremendously. I would say that if we begin with the do's, I would say that over communication and trust are the two pillars of remote work. You need to over communicate with your team, especially if you're not used to working in such a fashion. For example, You need to tell your team when you're going to be available. You need to tell your team when you're going to be online. You need to tell your team what you're working on. It doesn't have to be a play-by-play of everything you're doing, like I'm writing an email right now or I'm in a meeting, but they need to know that you're going to be working from 9 to 6 today, and you're going to have a lunch break. And they need to know that they can ping you at certain times, and at certain times you're not going to be available. They need to understand how they can ping you. And it's the same. I'm talking from the standpoint of a manager, but as an individual contributor as well, it's the same. People need to know when they can actually come and interrupt you or have a meeting with you. So you need to have a single source of truth. That would be your calendar, for example. So people actually know what you're doing and when they can actually go and talk to you. And because you don't have the same rapport than the one you would have when you're in an office and you can see whether Sophie over there is available or if someone is in a meeting, well, you need to make it very visible for everyone. So I would say that over-communication is one thing. Don't forget that over-communicating doesn't mean just sending messages and signals. It's also listening. Yeah. It's a two-way channel. So you need to sometimes stop and listen. And when you listen, you need to listen with, well, to be very engaged in the listening, and you need to use to muscle up your emotional intelligence and be able to pick on the clues, the little clues that someone is not doing okay, that someone is actually maybe a little bit annoyed, or someone has an issue with something. So you need to pick on all the nonverbal cues, and sometimes having a face. So having your camera on is something that can help. I'm not super keen on saying that you need to have your camera off at all times. Sometimes you're in a mess, and sometimes you're in your pajamas and you don't want everyone to know that you have pink flamingos on your pajamas. And sometimes you have a bad connection, and sometimes you have kids running around behind you, or a partner, or something is happening, and you're not very proud of your background. So many reasons why. I would say that let's try to keep a face-to-face contact, but it's not something that you absolutely need to do. But that's my point of view, specifically when you don't have all the equipment.
Yeah, thank you, Pamela. I would pick the first question from Carola. How do you build an healthy culture when you have a remote team?
What's an LC? Sorry.
Healthy culture.
Oh, okay.
Healthy.
How do you build? Yeah, okay, got it. I thought it was L and C.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, that's another acronym. But okay.
No, it's my accent. Sorry.
I love it. How do you build a healthy culture? I was having a conversation with my colleague Clementine yesterday, and we were saying that remote work is a magnifier. It's an amplifier. If something is good in your team, it's going to stay good in remote work. If the atmosphere is great, if you have some tolerance for failure, if you have a love of experimenting, for example, it's going to remain the same. It's going to probably be even better. And I talked about trust. Trust is something that you need to do by default. You need to say, okay, I have those people, they're here, they're supposed to be working. We're all in the same boat in this pandemic, specifically now, but even without the pandemic, it would still hold. I would say that you need to trust those people that they will do the best they can. You cannot micromanage, and you cannot be looking at their computers all the time to know what they're doing. So trust is very important. And how do you build the healthy thing? I was saying that it was an amplifier. It's also an amplifier for bad things. If there are processes that do not work, chances are they will not work at all in a remote work setting. So it's not so much about how to build it in or how to transfer that into the remote work, is how good is your culture, period. If the culture sucks, it's going to suck even more in remote work. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah. You can say if we answer well or not, and asking again if you need.
Yes,
but we have a question about from Marina about control and how to control the result and productivity of remote employees. So it's quite what you say, how to work together in the trust, but how to help them to really to achieve their goal with autonomy. So it's 101. What is concretely the organization you need to adapt as a manager to help your employee to succeed also in their productivity and achieve their goal?
Okay. I would say different things. So trust, again, I'm going to say that a lot, and over communication is very important. If you don't have one-on-ones with your direct reports, again, speaking as a manager, you should definitely set some up like right now. And you should probably have, at least for the beginning of the remote work setting, you should have too many rather than not enough. I used to do that with my team. So it was a remote team. Some of them were in Amsterdam, some of them were in Munich, for example, and some in Paris. And we would have 3 meetings a week. So stand-up meetings, 1 in the morning and on Mondays. So people would be able to know what was going to happen during the week. Then we would have 1 on Wednesdays to make sure that everybody was doing okay. And that was for the whole team. And then on Friday, still for the whole team. So those 3 meetings, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, would be to wrap up the week. But then I would have my one-on-ones with each of my direct reports on Mondays, usually. And it would be a very, very basic structure, but it would be, what have you delivered last week? What are you going to be focusing on in this week? What are the blockers? What are the things that I should know? And that came from my manager. Thank you, Aki, if you listen to that. And that was a very, very simple structure, but that's the best way for people to actually be able to report on what they're doing. That's one of the things you can do. By the way, after a while, we had those 3 meetings for the whole team. The team decided that it was too much, that they could just, work freely without having to check up on everyone else. So we decided that we would just keep the one on the Wednesday afternoon. So this is what we did. Going back to the one-on-ones, first start with a question that is open to ask about the mental health, ask about what's on their mind. And then you go through your whole structure of what they've done, what they're going to prioritize, and what you should know and how you can unblock some of the blockers. And make sure that you prepare in advance. One of the keys is in remote work, but outside of remote work, seriously, it's the best. If you can come prepared to a meeting, if you can call a meeting and have an agenda and have people read some of the stuff they need to read beforehand, that's the best use of everybody's time. So you need to prepare that. As a manager, you need to read what your direct report has written in their report, in the one-on-one report, or a follow-up document, however you want to call that. And they need to absolutely put something for you to read. And then you can discuss things that need to be discussed and not waste time on other things. And then you can also spend more time listening to what they have to say and how they're saying it. Are they okay? Are they not okay? Are they hiding something from you that they want you to actually know? I remember working with one of my direct reports, and I would have to ask her 3 times how she was doing before getting the real answer. And if you don't pay attention to that, you're just going to say, hey, how are you doing today? And she's going to be like, I'm fine. And then you're going to move on to the rest of your talk. And at the end of the thing, 2 months later, she quits because she hasn't been feeling well. And you have to make sure that you actually know what's going on, because you don't have all the little tips, all the little cues that you can get from the real office setting. So that's very important. Preparation.
It's part of the question we have from Dunya, and about the main action initiative you have launched or seen at GitHub or Doctolib to enable human connection and help building a strong culture. And for human connection, we have quite not similar question, but from Tasmin about how to use to replicate coffee room, brainstorm and informal conversation for remote teams. So it's part of, I think, human connection about informal learnings, creative ideas. So if you have, so I picked 2 questions in one, but for the first is main action and initiative, human connection and build a strong culture, and in the part of human for Tasmin. So if you have any idea about that.
Okay, just hold me accountable if I don't answer one of the questions, okay? Because I can just go free will.
So first enable human connection. I think you can focus on that, and then.
Well, you did mention something in your question that was already part of the answer. Virtual coffees are something they can do. I remember that when I joined GitHub, I was like, people were telling me about virtual lunches, like lunch dates over Zoom. And I was like, this is weird. I don't want to have that. I want to have lunch with actual people, but not sit in front of my computer eating sushi with my friend on the other side of the screen. And guess what? After a couple of months, I was looking forward to those dates, actually, the lunch dates. So we would make an appointment with a colleague of mine, for example, and we would say, okay, today we're eating sushi, and we would pick the sushis. That person would be in Berlin, I would be in Paris, and we would just, you know, have a casual lunch between colleagues, and that would be totally fine. It's something that you need to do. So obviously, when you're not in a pandemic, you don't have to do social distancing. What I used to do was to go out at least 2 or 3 times a week to make sure that I would see outside people. But in the pandemic, in the lockdown, in order to keep the bond, there's so many things you can do. You can have virtual coffees. You can check in the morning to say, hey, I'm here. This is my mood of the day. You can share your playlist. You can share a few things. You can share pictures of your favorite pets. You can share your favorite meme. Not too many memes, please, peep. And also try to do things that you would normally do at work, but you just transpose them in a virtual setting. It's not super difficult. I know it sounds a little bit silly to say that you're going to have a virtual coffee with someone, but it's a thing. Believe me, you get used to it very quickly. So that was the first answer. Plenty of tools
celebrate,
as well.
Yeah, about celebrating success and not forgetting that, because we can.
Celebrating birthdays. Again, a little bit different in a pandemic setting because you cannot necessarily send gifts and everything, but it's not about gifts. It's about just, you know, celebrating the occasion and just making a GIF party for that person. Or this is what we did the other day. We recorded a birthday message over Zoom with about 12 people, I think. And we're all wishing a happy birthday to someone. And then we recorded that, and when we emailed that to them, or we Slacked it to that person. The person was really, really happy. So many other things you can do that don't have to be in person. You can do them over the internet. It's not a problem. So celebrate successes. Do something like, hey, you've managed to launch that project and it was really good. You send that person a message and you send an email to their boss and you say, that was really good. Which is something you should do even
how
without
can you do
being
it
remote.
from the perspective of the architecture? You are the CEO, founder, you have a full remote team, 500 people, 1,000. What is the tips you can adopt? It's all ends. What can you do to engage your company, to have the feeling to be near them and really with empathy? So what are you doing at Doctolib? What was the main situation at GitHub? Just to give the overview for the not only the small teams, but
the larger teams.
I know that larger teams, because I know that Dunya working at Consensus, the blockchain company, and they are thinking a lot about turning into remote completely. So they need really concrete tips about that.
Okay. All hands, as you mentioned, would be my go-to. That for me would be part of the basics. When you reach a certain level, a certain size, everyone in the company needs to be on the same level of information, or they need to know things that you think they know, but they don't necessarily do. So having a regular meeting, maybe it's going to be every other week, maybe it's going to be every week, and it doesn't have to be long. But some people call it all hands meetings. Some other people call that town hall meetings. It's basically a time where the company is all listening to what's going on in the company. Could be the CEO, could be someone from the C-level, could be a presentation from someone else. That doesn't have to be with a big, huge title. But it's important for everyone to be here, as many people as you can to be here. And obviously, if you're a global company and you have people working on very different time zones, you need to record it and make the recording available for everyone. And ideally, if you even could have a small summary, a recap, that would be even better. Because not everyone has the time to go through another hour of meetings. But all hands is definitely something that we that people do at GitHub. And this is definitely also something that we do at Doctolib. Specifically now, we need to all keep the bond. So yeah, all hands, town hall meetings. That's one way of doing that. The other thing that I've seen that I'm always very impressed with is CEO Q&A. So the CEO is here. There's a session for 45 minutes, an hour, and you can ask anything. It's an Ask Me Anything session. And you also have something else that's pretty cool.
And it's a question we have from Cecilia.
Yeah, go ahead. The Q&A
it's
session.
related to that. How to, no, it's how to, do you maintain contact with a 30 plus team and organize meetings that are not only top-down information. So, and also with the fun non-work related time. So I think it's really to keep the bottom-up organization, and I think it's super important. So how to really completely organize that and not being like only top-down, giving this all ends without the possibility to. So Ask Me Anything session for sure is one part of the possibility, but do you have any
other
tips?
thing that people can do, and I've seen that, is office hours. I've seen many C-level people keeping office hours in their calendar, and you can just jump in and ask for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour with them. And that's one way to be in touch with those people that you don't necessarily talk to every day in a very privileged setting. The other thing is just have an open door policy. And when you don't have doors anymore, just make sure that you're available. I've received a very, very a great email from a CEO, my current CEO actually, saying that he was available for any one of us. And there's his phone number at the end of the email. So if I want to call him, I can call him and say, hey, I don't feel super well about that thing in particular. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I just hope that not all of us are going to call him individually, but just making sure that people know that you're available is good. And it goes both ways. Again, it's not just the CEO, as you were saying, bottom up is really good, but listening. And I think managers also have a very important role to play in making sure that the voice of their direct reports and individual contributors is heard, and they can report that back to up the hierarchy, if there's such a thing in a company. I don't know whether I answered the question, but please let me know if you need more information.
Yeah, I think so. We have a question from Sophie, but I think you have already answered. So perhaps, Sophie, you can tell us if we answered, how regularly do you touch base with your team? I think you talk about the one-on-one you have. So in a week, I imagine. So perhaps you can describe a little bit more your calendar with the team. And
I usually have one-on-ones at the beginning of the year. Sorry, at the beginning of the week, and then there's usually going to be a team meeting around either on the Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I like that. And so many other occasions, whether that's a meeting about something in particular, there will be other occasions. The other thing is that I would definitely recommend is using a chat tool in a remote setting. It's your best way to maintain some type of relationship with the people that you work with, whether they're in your team or not. But just dropping by and saying, hey, how are you doing? Or sending a nice little GIF of your favorite pug, or, just having those casual conversations. And it doesn't have to be disturbing for them. It's asynchronous communications, so they can answer in their own time without being, annoyed or disturbed or anything. And you use your status in your whether that's Slack or something else, in your chat tool. Use the status so people know whether they can actually expect an answer from you right away or whether you're busy at the time. That would be one of them. So Sophie, other tips for you. We talked about virtual coffees. We talked about brainstormings as well. We forgot to answer that. You can still have a brainstorming session. So many online tools where people can just add an idea just like they would on a Post-it note. So many, you have mind maps, so many other things you can use. It's definitely not something that remote work is a hindrance for. Any other?
So this is the tools you are using for motivate your teams, basically. Brainstorm, map to motivate them. I have a question for Milana about that. Yeah, a little bit, or what is your tips to really to keep your team motivated with you? could be like doing your one-on-one or your global meeting or something entertaining for them during the week when you can feel that someone is not anymore not working anymore because what is your tips really to motivate your team in a good way? Because we have another question coming. I think I can couple that with G. In communicating, sometimes I feel like I'm becoming very pushy and follow KPIs, how to avoid that. It is because of the processes. So I think it's about motivation and how to keep a normal conversation without to be pushy, control freak and everything.
Be human. That's my answer. Be human. If there's a song that you like, share it with your team and say, hey, have you listened to this song? What do you think? What's your favorite song of the moment? Let's have a dance party. Let's have a tea party. Let's have, again, a virtual coffee or anything else. Can be just there used to be at GitHub, we used to have some meetings where we would just talk about cats. So everybody would bring their cats on the screen and it would just be people saying, oh my God, your cat is beautiful. And some silly stuff like that is something that you can definitely say or organize. I would say that motivating is also, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you were talking with me about celebrating success because we can forget that. So we were talking about birthdays, but I was also talking about successes, how to celebrate that.
If someone does
I think it's a great way to motivate your team.
You can motivate your team by celebrating their success, whether that's a small success or a huge victory. There should always be some type of celebration. It can be just a general accolade on a public channel. If you're using Slack, for example, calling them, having a quick video conference saying, hey, that's great. And, having everyone on the team clapping for them at the same time could be a nice surprise to do, to organize. There's, just writing something and emailing them to them. Or if that person does not work in your team, sending a message to that person and copying their manager is a good thing. It happened to me in my team. People would say, hey, that person has done a great job and it has really changed the deal. And I was copied as a manager. I was like, this is great. This is wonderful. I'm so happy to be part of that team. And then we would talk about that. In some of the meetings we've had, we would begin the team meetings with a shout out session. So we would say, anyone could just say anything about someone. Like, hey, thank you for supporting me through a very hot week. Thank you for making sure that you took some things off my plate last week. Thank you for getting the leads to that level last week. Thank you for overperforming on anything. And it doesn't have to come from the manager. Actually, you should definitely push for a culture that allows everyone and anyone in the company to celebrate everyone. Because when one person wins, usually it should encourage other people to win as well. And everybody should be winning at the same time and be happy for that person. So if you don't want to have that discussions about just KPIs and OKRs and where's your performance, have you reached your quotas and everything, feel free to open your one-on-ones and your discussions with an open question. What's on your mind? What's going on in your life? What is your main thought? What is the thing that keeps you busy these days? Doesn't have to be professional. Doesn't have to be super, nosy and you need to know everything about their personal life. They need to share only what they want to share. And it's okay. But you should also model that by saying, hey, listen, this week, it's been very tough for me because my kids were sick or because my computer was acting out. So you need to show some vulnerability on your human side. Again, be human. And that should encourage people to be a little bit more human as well. This is one of the ways I would try to not just be about all work, even during work time.
Okay.
So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. We have a question from I think so. And we have a question from Dunya about the fear of missing out. You are not at the office, and one of a major pain point is so she has been noticing from working completely from home, that's a sensation to miss some information. And she realized that now I need to make more effort to get info that are not shared usually during the official meeting. Did you also notice this? And any recommendation to be into the conversation and to not miss crucial information in your remote situation?
My point of view, and that's real talk, and maybe that's from me being, having worked at GitHub for 3 years, write things down. If there's a meeting where things are happening and people who were not in that meeting cannot know what was going on or what decisions were made, then the company is missing out on so many things. I used to work under a manager that would say, if I'm getting hit by a bus, everything I know, everything you need to know is somewhere in there, in that folder or in that drive. So we know where to find the information. It's better to over document rather than not have any documentation about anything. People leave companies, people forget, people do other stuff and they change plans sometimes, and that's fine. But because of all that, because we're all humans and we're flawed in that way, we need to write things down and we need to prepare. And when you get out of the meeting and you say, this is what we've been discussing, this is the high level summary of what was done, and these are the next steps, and these are the people who are going to own those next steps. If you don't have that and you're fine with it, even in the office, and you're missing out and you don't feel that you're missing out on information, remote work is not going to make that happen. It's not going to fly. You need to write things down. You need to make everybody aware of what's being done. Otherwise, information will go missing, stuff will go missing in general, and people leave again. So you need to keep that knowledge somewhere.
Yeah.
So right.
And perhaps you can have the sensation you need to go to participate to all the meeting and to have this Zoom burnout sensation. So I think you need to avoid absolutely that. So I think it's a good thing to say everything needs to be written. If you don't know, you need to ask. If you have heard about information you missed, you need to ask and to change the process globally. And I think what you said is really a great advice, even for your CEOs, top management, and to implement it at the global level. And perhaps we need some advice about the leadership in a virtual management meeting. I think there is some tips you can give us about how to find allies. We know as a woman, sometimes it's difficult. You can have mansplaining. So mansplaining in a Zoom session is something. So how to adopt new strategies. You tell me about a really tricky strategy I really like. Perhaps you can begin with that. It's only for you, but we never repeat it.
Yes, please.
And then giving some advice about how to find the leads and yeah. So
yeah,
it's not recorded. Don't. We are not hearing.
Okay, no worries. It's only between the two of us. Yeah, it happened to me. So I freaking hate mansplaining, as many of you must as well. And what happens is that when that happens, the good thing when you're in a remote setting on a Zoom call or in any other video call is that you can just pretend that that person was freezing and you say, sorry, and you just cut them in the middle of a sentence and you say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you were saying. You were freezing like 10 seconds ago. So I really missed what you were saying. I suppose that you were trying to move forward with that point. But please, I think if we need to take that offline, let's just do that. We can move forward. And you just pretend that you have some technical difficulties, that your Zoom is not working properly, and you cut that person short with a smile and a wink. No, you don't have to smile. Women don't have to smile. But yeah, that's super tricky. I've done that many times. As for leadership, but obviously don't tell anyone. But as for leadership, I would say, again, it's an amplification. What you do in a room is going to be the same as what you should do remotely. You were talking about allies. I think allies is something that you cannot do without. specifically when you're a woman. If there's another woman, and again, I'm going to quote, I think it's Madeleine Albright who said that there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. If it's not her, sorry, misappropriation of this quote. But I would say that I would use that. I would leverage the presence of another woman in the assembly, or if someone that comes from another historically underrepresented group, and make that person an ally and say, hey, I need to make sure that this idea comes forward. If you see that my voice is not being heard, can you please support me and maybe bring that back to the center stage? And there's something that you can use that you cannot necessarily have in a office setting. It's private messages. DM your ally and say, did you see what just happened? John just cut me mid-sentence. Can you please make sure that I'm feeling too shy? So can you make space for me to actually present my idea again? Or can you say, oh, John, that's really funny that you're talking about this idea, because that's exactly what Mandy was saying 2 seconds ago. That's funny. So you agree. That's good. But when you say...
So you can use the technology as an ally, too.
Yes, technology is your ally as well. Yeah. And find your ally. Find someone who's going to support you to make your point and to bring it forward and put it on the center stage again. And also, don't ask for permission, do stuff. You're a woman, you can multitask. Yeah. We've been trained to do that. Everybody says, yes, women can multitask without a problem. This is our time to shine, I would say, because we can write private messages while listening to what is being said in the communication, in the meeting, while probably feeding a baby on the side and ordering the dinner, or preparing or finding the next recipe for dinner. So many things we can do. I would definitely I would definitely make sure that we can make the most of that. And it doesn't have to be dinner and everything. You can also have a partner who does that, if you have a partner or a roommate or whatever. But those were just examples, obviously, not gender.
And a question about the imposter syndrome. I think in remote we can have, and perhaps it was quite the question of Dunya. So this fear of missing out, it's kind of, we need reassurance, positive feedback. And settle our priorities, listen, and really we need to say no sometime, and with methodology. How to give us the reassurance, what can we do really to be the great manager we want to be, without to adapt man's strategies, and having this sensation, these feelings that we are not the good person at the right place. I don't know if you have any advice about that, but I think it's a case for many female managers in remote, especially. So I don't know if you have any tips about that.
I have a mantra, which is, well, I have two actually. It's, you got this and you are enough. So you need to silence the voice. That's my friend. I have a friend, her name is Angela Christ, and she wrote a wonderful article about how to silence the voice in your head around imposter syndrome. So basically imposter syndrome comes from you being your own worst enemy and saying, I'm not fit for that. I'm not skilled for that. I'm not competent enough. So just, first of all, make sure that whenever there's feedback possible, you ask for feedback. And most of the time, you will see that the feedback that you're giving yourself is way harsher than the one that other people will give you. So ask for feedback, ask for kind feedback. Sometimes it can be blunt, but that's the type of feedback you can also thrive on. But ask for feedback, and you will see that it's not as bad as you think it is most of the time. If it is, then you need to work on it, and it's not imposter syndrome. But in most cases, people will think that you're doing a way better job than you think you are. So ask for feedback, write the positive feedback, write it down. So the friend I was mentioning before, Angela Christ, she advises people to write the feedback down or keep it somewhere, and you save it. And whenever you feel down, you hear the voices, you go back to the positive feedback and you read each one out loud pump you up, to hype you up a little bit. So that's one way of doing that. As for feedback, write the feedback, read the good feedback as well. Maybe reframe the way you think about a challenge. And also remember that you're not the only one with imposter syndrome. It's something that everybody and their mothers have. Everybody feels some type of imposter syndrome at some time. So it's not as if we were all faking it all the time, but you're not alone. And if anyone had the perfect recipe to do things perfectly, then I would have bought it a long time ago. So yeah, try to be nicer to yourself, be kinder to yourself. And as for fear of missing out, I remember that I was part of so many meetings at some point. I looked at my calendar and my manager told me, how are you spending your time each week? And I looked at it and I was spending 70% of my time in meetings. Did I need to be on all of these meetings? No. Specifically, if things are written down, then you can go back and read the exact summary of what's been going on in those meetings. And you make some time to do something else. But you need to keep the control of your own time and your own calendar at some point. I saw somebody recommending Clockwise. Sorry, I'm too talkative.
No, absolutely not. We have 5 minutes left, and I will ask you a last question because we don't have in the Q&A tool. So it's about hiring. I think it's something. I think it's the most difficult things now is to hiring in remote. So I think the one-on-one meeting, meeting the people in person is something really all the people are doing except distributed companies. So I will ask you, due to your experience, some tips and really advice about hiring in remotes. So please tell us more about how do you do and what the do and the don't you need to think about hiring in remote.
I would say that hiring remote or hiring in person is actually the same at heart. The only difference is that you don't have the person in front of you. So maybe you won't get some hints from them, physical hints, but apart from that, it's the same. Again, remote work is an amplifier. So if your interview or hiring process is flawed, it will show up. It will show 10 times bigger in a remote setting. Make sure you have that right before you go to remote work. I've hired, I don't know, maybe in the last 18 months for my teams, I must have hired like 4 or 5 people remotely. And I've been in countless interviews to hire other people coming in the team, probably 100. But I would say that remote hiring is something that you can do. Doctolib, for example, has done it beautifully, and they're still doing it with loads of people right now. And it's all about preparation. Are you asking the same questions for the same job? Is it fair? Is it objective? Are you being on time? Because if those things are consistent throughout your process in person, they should remain consistent throughout your process remotely as well. If things are going badly in your process, if people arrive late to the interview arrives late, the person that will be waiting in a room will be at least maybe entertained by other people going around. Maybe someone will come and tell them whether they want a glass of water or something. If you're in remote, that person will stay staring at the blank screen on Zoom or on another thing. And I can tell you the experience will be really bad, and that person will probably not feel very respected or welcome. So the skills you're asking for someone are not, unless you're working in fashion, it's not about what type of clothes they wear. It's not about the size of their butt. It's not about the color of their skin or their eyes or their hair. It's about what type of skills they can bring to you. Do they have the right attitude to work? Can they actually do the work you want them to do? Can they evolve? Can they bring something to the company? Can they add value? This will come through maybe with a few like real life case studies or other things that you can put in your interview process. But this will be exactly the same whether you see the person or whether you don't see them. I mean, except for a few obviously exceptions, this should not matter. And this should make hiring more inclusive in a way, but you need to make it more inclusive.
Yeah.
As a base.
Yeah, you can hire with disability and you can see it perhaps, and it's better.
Yes.
It's
exactly.
because
and
you can have a more inclusive perhaps. Yeah.
And then that person can work from home if you make it
Unfortunately,
possible.
this is the end of our conversation, Pamela. Thank you so much. It was really lovely to have you, such a great advice. We will share all the resources. I think you talk about Angela careers, any tips. So we will share all the tips and articles and resources coming from this conversation with Pamela. The great thing is that Pamela is connected at 15 Tech. So if you have any advice, you can connect and asking one-on-one connection. That's the power of the platform. That's a cool thing. And I think Pamela will share the tips on the platform, the best advice. And now she's the diversity and inclusion director at Doctolib. So she can share also her best practices they will implement and this great French unicorn based in France and Germany now. Yeah, you want
and
to
please share feedback.
Yeah, so we will send you a type form, so a survey to collect your insight and your feedback. So please fill it. It's important for our speaker panelists to know about the quality of the conversation and to know about what you want to hear for the next online session. So thank you very much, Pamela. I will just give you, yeah, Pamela, you can say. Thank you very much. And I will give you the two next online session. So next week we'll have two. One on Thursday at 5 p.m. CET with Station F. It's being ready for the after crisis. So it's quite a survival strategy in sales, fundraising process. We will have two great panelists. Kim Walsh, it's a global VP sales at HubSpot for startups. She's based in Boston. And we'll have Geraldine Lemer, serial entrepreneur and angel investors. She's based in San Francisco. So she will give you a lot of advice on so Thursday. And we will send you all the information. And on, no, it's Tuesday, sorry. Tuesday, and Thursday it will be with Deepali Nanga. She's one of the best early stage startup advisor in the UK, angel investors in specialized really in female founders, especially femtech and healthtech founders with the angel program from Atomico. So please be with us next week, and we are working on session on mental health, about the situation with of startups still hiring, and I think Doctolib is still hiring now because we know that the situation for job is complicated. So speak soon, and see you next week. Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.